All right, guys, so there's a lot of improvements that you can make to your property to improve it. And if we want to talk about getting really, focused on doing certain things, this video is for you. This is one of the things that I really like to focus on properties, having a solid balance of this, and ultimately eradicating or removing this type of timber or tree. Okay, so there's a tree out there that it's on a lot of properties. It's surrounding us right now even, that is not super beneficial to wildlife. But more so focused on deer. It's not the most beneficial tree that you could have on your property, and you should, in most part, maybe use it sparingly or get rid of it in majority on your property, because at the end of the day, it's not benefiting deer the most, or as good as that area could if that tree was not there. What is that tree? Well, as a whole, it's part of the conifer family, and we'll talk about eastern red cedars today, but also just conifers as a whole. Conifers, pine trees, things like that, in my opinion, are some of the less desirable trees that you can have on your property. And in majority, depending on the property, depending on the situation, I know some of you are thinking, I have a lot of these, I need to get rid of them all. It's situation dependent, but in most scenarios, I would lean towards getting rid of a lot of these conifers. So let's first talk about the eastern red cedar for a second. Eastern red cedar is an invasive tree that wasn't necessarily in all the places that it's in now, across the landscape years and years ago. The eastern red cedar, not the most nutritional tree for deer habitat. So what I'm getting at is, a lot of times late in the year, especially in those northern climates, we end up seeing that deer are browsing on cedars. Okay, that is a sign. That is a sign that if your deer are feeding on cedars, that you don't have enough quality food in your area, because cedars are not a quality food for deer. Okay, so basically, if you see deer feeding on cedars, it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign for your deer herd at all. And what you could be doing instead is, if you eradicated those cedars, ultimately allow the sunlight to hit the forest floor and create new regeneration at the deer's level, woody browse, grasses, and forbs especially, so that these deer can ultimately have quality nutrition versus eating cedars. Okay, so it's kind of a double-edged sword, or a win-win situation when you get rid of these cedars. One, you're going to create better habitat for bedding and things like that, and ultimately for other species, whether it's turkeys for nesting, things like that. But it's also going to benefit the deer, and it's going to benefit them from a nutritional food standpoint, and just creating more cover. So if you guys get rid of those eastern red cedars, and even just conifers as a whole, it's going to allow for this whole process to take place. And like I said, so I brought up conifers, and I bring up eastern red cedars first because it is an invasive, I guess you could consider it, and what isn't anymore. Over time, things evolve, things change a lot just due to human traffic and things being pushed around, and erosion and whatever else. But the eastern red cedar is one that I definitely focus on, but as a whole, conifers. So if I go to a property and I see a lot of pines, of any sort, think about it. Once again, these pines are always blocking sunlight, guys. And if you want to strategically place bedding or make a food source, obviously you're gonna wanna get rid of them if you're creating a food source, if you're creating a food plot, I should say. But if you wanna create better bedding, better habitat for those deer to spend time in, getting rid of those pines, once again, is going to allow the sunlight to hit the forest floor, create new regeneration, and create browse and create bedding. So timber stand improvement as a whole can be one of the best options that you can honestly use to make your property better. It can solve a lot of issues, but especially getting rid of those pines. I can think of a property that I hunted growing up, and in its early days, it was a pine plantation, but there was enough room between pines where the sun could come down and grasses and forbs would grow. Deer would spend a lot more time bedded there and a lot more time feeding in there. As I got older, that place evolved, it grew up, and it started choking everything out underneath that level of pine. So now if I were to go in that pine plantation and I were to get down on my hands and knees, and this is a great way for you to check, if you got these pine plantations, when do I need to start thinning them out? When do I have to start getting rid of some of these? You can get down on your hands and knees and literally look and see how far you can see. And if it's completely just a barren desert, basically, a biological desert, I guess you could call it, at the deer's level, at a rabbit's level, at a turkey's level, then it's not good habitat. And that's when you need to start taking some of these trees out. So when you take these trees out, sunlight hits the forest floor, nature takes its course, new regeneration starts, and ultimately you have better habitat. So whether it's cedars, whether it's your pines, whether it's any tree that really blocks the sunlight, you need to be able to manage that tree species properly and ultimately create a better hunting parcel by doing so. So if there was one thing that I'd have to recommend to you guys, a lot of pines on your property, maybe think about taking them out and taking them out strategically so that you can create better bedding and better food on your property. So guys, get rid of those conifers.